saying fuck the system. Well, I already did that like an old flame. I was sent to earth with a mission. But first I gotta work through all the old pain, work through all the traumas that affected. My mind, body, spirit is connected. I'm tryna feel good, it's time to heal good. I'm tryna feel good, it's time to heal good. I'm tryna heal.
Hi, I'm Mackenta.
And I'm Tabisha, and this is Heal Good, a space where we discuss how to take healing into your own hands.
We are so passionate about the continuous journey of healing.
Because we know if you want to feel good, you gotta heal good.
In today's crazy world, it is important to know how to stay centered and grounded. Otherwise, it can feel like you're just being tossed all over the place. But there are ways to learn how to ground your energy. One of the very first steps, though, is learning how to create boundaries, not just with other people, but also for yourself. This will simplify your life and just help you build better relationships.
Boundaries aren't always easy to create, but we're going to talk about how you can start doing that effectively. Not everyone deserves access to you, respectfully.
Respectfully.
Here are 3 signs that you may need to create better boundaries.
Number 1, you feel guilty saying no.
No is a full sentence, really.
And part of it is also when you take responsibility for your own life and your own well-being, you also have to start taking responsibility for the situations that you allow yourself to be in. Being afraid to say no is you're afraid of other people's reactions, you're afraid of hurting other people, which is fair. Like, I definitely would be in the past, and even sometimes now, I definitely had a hard time saying no because I would always think more about how the other person feels than how I feel. The thing is, then you end up in situations where, most importantly, you can end up in situations that are dangerous for yourself or hurtful or harmful. But you also end up in situations where, you know, sometimes it's just like you're under the weather, but you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. So you say yes to that invitation that you wanted to say no to, and then you show up there and you're in a bad mood and you ruin everyone else's mood when you should have just said no. And I think it's really important to start just putting yourself first, and there's a way to say no. Part of it is developing the courage to be able to say no and stand up for yourself. And sometimes people will like hassle you about it, or if you tend to be that person who bends backwards for everyone, people might not be used to you saying no.
That could definitely be a challenge, but just remember at the end of the day, when you are, reaffirming the boundaries that you're creating for yourself, that it's part of your well-being. So you can't always be the yes guy or the yes girl. You really have to make sure you're putting yourself first.
And sometimes it's also saying no to yourself. There's certain habits that you might have where, you might be drinking and you might be always saying yes to too many drinks. And sometimes it's about having boundaries for your own limits to keep yourself safe. It's not always about other people, but I find a lot of people, especially if you're a sensitive person, like we are sensitive people, you really can feel other people's energies, so you kind of take responsibility for how their reaction is to you saying yes or no. But you have to learn to be firm. You have to learn that not everyone is entitled to your energy.
Number 2, you feel responsible for the decisions of other people. Yeah, it's also creating boundaries is also realizing that you're not responsible for other people's problems that may come up or baggage, and just really finding like the balance between being like supportive or like taking on that whole bag of stuff that someone else is carrying. It's not fair to your overall well-being to be doing that, and it's also not fair to the person or the situation, because there may be things that need to play out for them to realize, okay, I need to create better boundaries for myself. I'm going to start doing that. And sometimes it just takes you being like, I'm not taking responsibility for this, or just making that line extremely clear. Like, I can support you this way, or I can't support you in this, is like the best way for someone to really learn, okay, how do I show up differently for myself, or how can I show up more for myself when it comes to situations like this, you know?
Because part of when you feel like you have to control other people's decisions, or a decision that someone else makes, you taking it on as your own, some of that could be codependency, which is a whole other world of things. And I've definitely had codependent relationships, which basically just means like when two people are kind of bound together through their own trauma or through their inability to survive on their own. And it prevents both people from being able to thrive on their own, and it usually keeps two people who are wounded together rather than allowing each person to heal their wounds and grow together. And I had been in a codependent relationship for the longest time and not even realized what codependency is. And so Google that and look into codependency if you feel like, oh, am I a codependent person? But most likely, if you feel like when someone else makes a decision that it's your job to jump in and save them. I used to think that I was being the good person for saving other people from their problems, but really I was not allowing them to learn from their mistakes. And I was also adding problems to my own plate that weren't mine to solve.
It could be tricky, but realizing that for yourself is so important, because you don't want to hinder anyone's lessons that they're supposed to be learning like on their own.
Like, unless you are the parent of a child who is still learning how to make decisions, that's one thing. But when your child is a grown-up, or you know, I find it happens a lot with partners or friendships. It's important. The boundaries allow others to realize what you will do and what you are not willing to do, because it's harmful for yourself. And even if you might not see like the physical harm, emotionally it can take a toll when you are always being that savior person. There's something to look at in yourself of why do you always feel like you need to save another person.
You don't want to block a blessing or a lesson trying to just show up more than you need to. You just don't want to block either or. They're both very important on the journey, you know, and it's just good to be aware of when you're participating in that.
This third one is kind of similar to all of them, but it's a little different. It's you make excuses for how other people treat you or mistreat you.
What we're not going to do is give excuses. We're going to see things for what they are, and we're going to operate based off of that knowledge that we've gained. Because I feel like I've definitely been in situations where I'm always trying to see the good, but sometimes when you can see the good, but you also have to accept like the bad in situations or a person. It's just important for you to just see things as they are and not constantly, you know, betray your own knowledge that you have based off of the experience that you've had with a situation or a person. You really have to, once you know better, like you do better or try to, you know, we're not perfect, we're here working on it, right? With experience, you really have to make sure that always seeing the good or making excuses for how someone treats you isn't hindering, you know, your well-being and the growth that you're moving towards for yourself.
There's a saying, when people show you who they are, believe them. That is, I think, also if you're an empath or just someone who is empathetic to others or sensitive to others, it's easy to look at them and be like, well, I understand why they did that because they were hurting, or I understand why they did that because this happened to them, or I understand why they spoke to me that way because I upset them. When people have to also respect you, and you have to make sure that you're not just creating excuses for them. Again, like the last thing that we were talking about, because that just allows people to keep.
So you're enabling.
Yeah, it enables the behavior and makes people think that you accept how they treat you. And it's okay for people to make mistakes. you can have conflict or disagreements with people and still accept them back into their life, but there has to be some level of accountability. And you can't just say in your mind, oh, it's okay, if you don't feel okay, because a lot of times when we do that, it's because we're afraid of losing that relationship. But really, the people who respect us would want to treat you how you need to be respected. And as long as you're being respectful and you are treating other people well, you also deserve to be treated well. And sometimes it just means that you have to love people from afar, and that's a really difficult thing to do. But when you're on this journey of healing and growth, part of it is you will lose things, and you will lose people who aren't right for you. And that as hard as that can be, that is part of the healing journey, because as you lose certain people, you are able to make room for people who are more aligned with who you are becoming. And you won't always lose people. That's the other thing. Sometimes with you setting the record straight of how you want to be treated, people will adjust their behavior. The people who care enough, and sometimes they're not emotionally ready to do that, and sometimes you just have to leave people where they are,
and accept them for where they're at, but just knowing that there's a journey that you have to keep going, boundaries that you have to keep creating for yourself, internally and externally. Internally, getting real about, how certain things make you feel, how you need to show up, what you need to do for your overall well-being internally. Externally, who and what you're allowing in that may not be giving the same energy that, you put out in that situation.
And it's not always people boundaries too. Sometimes it's with the information that you let in. Sometimes it's about creating boundaries on social media, whether it's you saying I'm not going to spend more than this amount of time on social media, or I'm not going to watch certain things anymore that don't make me feel good. There's different types of boundaries, but on the journey of healing, it's really important to surround yourself with people and things that make you feel good and feel supportive. And you can't necessarily always avoid things that make you feel uncomfortable or don't make you feel good, but when you have that boundary, you determine how much of it you allow in.
We're going to end off with some self-reflection questions that you can ask yourself. It's helpful to journal the things that come to mind without judgment. Question 1. What fears do I have around saying no or disappointing others? Question 2. How can I be there more for myself and find support in the process while I'm creating new boundaries? Question 3. How can I communicate these boundaries from a place of love and respect? Think of areas that you may need to create better boundaries for yourself and how you can create the boundary from a space of love. Breathe in. It's my right to protect my energy. Exhale.
If you resonated with this episode, it would mean a lot to us if you would share with a friend, comment, and subscribe.
Please let us know in the comments what you would like to see more of, and we'll be here every Wednesday helping you and ourselves heal good.